I think that this pair of questions is kind of hard, and what's really going to help us here is just staying organized. When things get very scientific, the science passages, it's easy to get overwhelmed. There's a lot of terminology. There's a lot of just like weird sciencey stuff that you don't know anything about, and so that can be intimidating because you're like, oh, I don't know this. I didn't take this class, you know. But it shouldn't matter, right? This isn't really a test about birds. This is a test about reading, and so that is what the skill is, and that's what you should worry about, is how well can you find this answer in the text. And the QLC method, I think, here is going to keep us focused on the right things at the right stage of the process. So the first thing we need to do is make sure we understand the question. That's the Q of the QLC method. And so what does it say? Which statement best captures Ken Dial's central assumption? Well, no, there's more to it, and that's the problem, is a lot of people ignore the rest of the question. In setting up his research. That's a powerful phrase. That means something very specific. Ken Dial could have made many assumptions along the way. We're looking for one at this particular point in the process when he's setting up his research. I think that's helpful, and I think you should underline that, show your work, so that you have a reminder that that's there, okay? That's a helpful thing. Now we go to the L part of the QLC method, the line references, and we're going to sort through these, and we're going to look. Is there an assumption, maybe? Usually on the SAT, when there's an assumption, it's not explicitly stated. We have to kind of understand that it's an assumption, so that may be hard, but setting up his research, we would kind of know what that looks like. So that's why that's an important phrase. So let's go to lines 1 through 4 and see what we get. Here we go. At field sites around the world, Ken Dial saw a pattern in how young pheasants, quail, tinamous, and other ground birds ran along behind their parents. Well, there's no research here. This is just a guy looking at birds. So nothing. 6 through 11. That is here. So when a group of graduate students challenged him to come up with new data on the age-old ground-up, tree-down debate, he designed a project, set up his research, to see what clues might lie in how baby game birds learn to fly. So, okay, I'm not going to start guessing about what the assumption is, but I do see that they're talking about him setting up his research. So that's a good sign. I'm going to keep that in there. C, 16 to 19. That is here. When the cowboy stopped by to see how things were going, Ken showed him his nice, tidy laboratory setup, okay, and explained how the bird's first hops and flights would be measured. Okay, well, it doesn't... it's saying he showed the guy his setup, but it's not really describing the setup in any way. It's tidy. Yeah, I'll leave this in because it's talking about the way he set it up, but it's not really describing it in a meaningful way, so that doesn't... It's not... I don't know. That doesn't seem really helpful. But let's see. I don't know. I guess I didn't really think that deeply about choice B, so I shouldn't really have to worry about choice C the same way yet. Let's look at 23 to 24. That is here. At first, it seemed unnatural. Ground birds don't like the ground. Is that really it? Well, that doesn't mean anything to me. We're not talking about anything. At first, it seemed unnatural. Ground birds don't like the ground. I have no idea what that means at all. It has nothing to do with the setup. It has nothing to do with the experiment. It's ground birds and ground. I don't really know what that has anything to do with anything. So yeah, I would get rid of that. So that's good. I've narrowed my focus a bit now. I don't really know the answer, but I know enough that I can start to search for a pair of answers for using question 23. So let's see. I'm not going to go back to those line references and try to understand them better. I'm going to let the answer choices in number 23 do that for me. Tells me what to care about. In choice A, the acquisition of flight in young birds sheds light on the acquisition of flight in their evolutionary ancestors. So did they talk about young birds? Yeah, they did. Baby game birds. Okay. Sheds light on the acquisition of flight in their evolutionary ancestors. So when they're talking about the ground-up, tree-down debate, and that, remember, is how these things learn to fly. I should have given you the blurb here, but it is helpful, I think, a little bit. So, okay, maybe that works. It seems like they're talking about how things learn to fly, and they definitely talk about babies, so okay. Let's look at B. The tendency of certain young birds to jump erratically is a somewhat recent and evolved behavior. Well, I don't see them jumping anywhere. No. They're not jumping. So, I don't know what that's about, so gone. C. Young birds in a controlled research setting are less likely than birds in the wild to require perches when at rest. Well, perches weren't talked about either, so I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me either. Ground dwelling and tree climbing predecessors to birds evolved in parallel. Well, I don't know. I mean, it doesn't really make that kind of distinction. I don't really understand this choice, and that's not a good sign, because if the line reference is supporting it, then I should understand it, right? The line reference should kind of tell me what this means and vice versa. So this is a good example of being confused isn't always bad. Being confused might just mean you're looking at some choices that don't make any sense, and like, okay, you can move on, you can cross them out. So what did make sense was pretty obvious, right? Like the young birds thing, that's definitely talked about here. And they're trying to figure out how birds learn to fly. So that seems to match with choice A, and that they talk about the baby birds in choice B. So that's our pair, and those are the answers. And so staying organized here helped us. It didn't let the science get too crazy. We didn't read all of these lines about him setting up the experiment. We only focused on the ones that the question told us to go to. That's the advantage of the no reading strategy, is we're not cluttering our brain with information that isn't important. We're going exactly where we're told. We're looking at the options that we're given, nothing more. And that way we only have that information in our brains and not all this extra science stuff that surrounds it. And I think for that reason, the answers here kind of stood out as being fairly obvious. And if there was anything I was confused about, I just move on. I go on with my day. Didn't matter. There was no connection. So I'll cross them out and go on.